Gene, you still got your Rambo?
Yeah,
You don't mind the other one for park, do you?
why? After years.
Right, we have 4
Computer
o'clock.
goes on the fritz. I don't trust it.
All right, I'm calling the meeting order at 4 PM for the planning commission. Please take the roll.
Mayor Bell,
Present?
Alderman Schmidt does not appear to be here. John Gable was excused. Gene Franz,
Here.
Brock Fleischer,
Here.
Andy Schumacher,
Here.
sorry.
Still here.
And Travis Poles is
Present?
present, okay.
Okay. Quorum's present. Approval of the minutes of the May 22nd, 2024 planning commission meeting minutes.
Motion approved.
Motion by Fleischer,
I'll second.
second by Frame. Any discussion? Any additions or corrections? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Citizen comments. I'll just say under citizen comments that I did, our John Gable did contact me and he is gonna be resigning from the board. He's having some health issues. Wish him well. All right, discuss with possible action, the allowable permit use and conditional use for zoning district M2 general manufacturing. All right, Nick.
So the item 1 and 2 are kind of tied into each other. We got an occupancy permit for one of the properties there, and under the M2 zoning district, they have a permitted or a conditional use for used car sales and detail. In my discussions with Stephanie, it sounds like she had reviewed what the process was to establish that, and it sounds like there was no public notice that was.
We didn't have a public hearing, so we needed a public hearing. There's a memo on the side that you can read. Yeah, you wanna go over that?
First of all, I think you should go over the discussion between the M2 and the M1.
Okay,
I mean, we're in M2 where you feel that it's a conditional use, but also you feel like it could be a permitted use.
I was gonna say
For
that for
this.
the actual occupancy permit, but yeah.
But you-
I know there was some,
Otherwise, okay, I can go over my memo. Today, I didn't draft the memo until today because I just heard back from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, their council on Monday, so I drafted the memo today. And it is regarding the zoning amendment ordinance number 1128-2021, in which, in M2, general manufacturing district, in which this this occupancy permit was taken out for, it would be listed as a conditional use, where that car detailing, used car and car detailing was added as a conditional use. And the history of that ordinance, it was recommended to Common Council by Plan Commission on December 15th, 2021. The minutes are in your packet. And then it was introduced to Common Council on December 13th of 2021 and adopted by Common Council on January 10th of 2022. During my review of looking through the minutes and the agendas, there was no public hearing. So anytime you make revisions to your zoning code, it has to be done by a public hearing because it's property interest or someone's property. So that's stated under the state statute 62.23, that a public hearing is required for your zoning code amendments. So I reached out to the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, Ryan Settlebach, and asked them if the city would be able to enforce this ordinance because it did not have a public hearing. And his recommendation was that he felt that since a public hearing was not conducted, a court would probably rule that the amendment was invalid and if it was challenged. So, but he also did state that we should seek a additional advice from our municipal attorney if we needed it on the subject. So that's what I just wanted to bring forward to the plan commission in dealing with this occupancy permit.
So, just so I have it straight in my head, under D, conditional use, all that stuff that's listed. So if someone's in the M2 manufacturing district, they could apply for conditional use and all the stuff that's listed, that would fall into that M2 district.
Those are the conditional uses for that district. yes.
Right. Right, but because we didn't have this public hearing,
It was just, the public hearing or the zoning amendment was only adding the car, I gotta find the wording,
our detailing.
Detailing. I think.
the detailing, used car sales and detailing. It's highlighted. That was all it added to the conditional uses that were already there.
I thought we had a list of all the things that we wanted to add under conditional use.
You brought a list from West Bend or something like that, I think.
We're right up here.
This is City of West Bend's M2. This is what I proposed in December of that year. There's a few other conditional uses. I didn't have time to highlight the ones that we were gonna add. But basically what I proposed at that time was to have our M2 district very similar to City of West Bend's. And I believe that's what the council at the time agreed to, or the commission, I should say.
So I will agree with you. I mean, the way the ordinance is drafted, it just puts that in there. It doesn't say what part of our ordinance was repealed and recreated
Sure.
Right,
when the ordinance was drafted. So
Right.
it's very confusing for
right.
me to go back in time, okay, if it's invalid, what's invalid? I couldn't make that determination.
Well, I think going forward, we should,
I don't know, did you want me to make copies of
yeah,
it?
make copy of that, and we should add that to our conditional use, along with our current stuff that we have, and we should start over.
As a citizen, can I say something?
Sure.
Okay.
Technically, it would be as a board member because we have citizen comments at one point in the agenda.
Yeah.
Citizens cannot speak throughout
Yeah,
the meeting.
but the chairman can,
But as-
freaking have
Okay.
him speak. Go ahead.
Sorry, I still wanna, I know he's on the board. he's here.
Okay. Real quick, as a citizen, all right, when I found out that, I needed a conditional use to have a guy wash vehicles in an M2 district, kind of was flabbergasted. So I did some research, just so you guys know that City of Mayville's really not on the same page as other municipalities in this county. For instance, the City of Beaver allows car detailing, auto detailing in their local business district, which is basically their central business district. That's, equivalent to our central business without a conditional use. City of Lamira allows a auto detailer in their central highway and business park zones. City of Fort Pat, they allows auto detailing shop in their central district with a conditional use, but everything else, M1, M2, it's without a conditional use. So as a citizen, I was a little concerned because when I really dove into our zoning, it wasn't very equivalent to other towns and municipalities. And if I was a business owner from out of town looking to purchase a building in the city of Mayville, I think I'd be a little upset or drawn back from purchasing a building because the zoning to have a detailer in an M2 district was a little, to have a conditional use was a little above and beyond what's out there in other municipalities. So as a citizen, I was very concerned with that. And I think the commission should really look into our zoning because they're not very equivalent, at least in my point of view as a citizen. That's all I'll say right now.
And for my discussion with Travis, if you look at the zoning map, we have properties around the property in question that are zoned B2 outline business. And B2 outline business allows for the uses that he was talking about.
I'm gonna say something as a commission member real quick. So those properties that were zoned outlying business, I don't know for sure, but I'm gonna guess that they were spot zoned.
They are.
Okay, now, if the city of Mayville had proper zoning, we could have got away from spot zoning those properties. Because there's no reason why you can't have, because that whole section out there was probably zone M2 from the start, I'm guessing, because that goes way beyond when I was born. But if you had a proper zoning ordinance, you should not have to spot zone to have EVS put a auto sales there. Because chances are that's probably what happened. That's my guess. Where if it's zoned M2 and the zoning is actually, correct, like other towns, even their central business, it'll say, yeah, central business, you can do these services plus these with a conditional use. And then they go to outlying business and say, you can do everything in the central business plus these services, and then plus these with a conditional use, and it goes on and forth. Where Mabel's only says that in the M1 to M2, if my memory serves me correct. So there's actually, there's a really problematic, as a business owner, when I wanted to file an occupancy permit to have a service industry in the old Goodyear building, when I look at M2 zoning, I couldn't find anything that really would fit. Whereas if you go to the city of Beaver Dam or Lamira, you can follow that ordinance a lot easier because from their central business, they allow everything down the road, where Mabel's only says M1, M2. I feel that the commission should look into that and maybe decide as a group if we need to change that. But I think it makes, in my opinion, it makes sense. Now, in other towns, like you can't just say you can have everything in an M2 district. City of Beaver Dam, for example, has restrictions, like you can't have a daycare in an M2 district. So it's so much easier following along in an ordinance in City of Beaver Dam as a business owner than it is in Mabel's. Because if I wanted to start a service industry is actually a great example because most municipalities will allow that in either their central or outlying business zones. When you look at Mabel's M1, I couldn't find anything in M1. And because technically it doesn't say in M1 zone that, hey, if you have a property in M1, you can do everything in the central outline. It doesn't say that. So if I had a service industry, technically speaking, I couldn't put it in an area in town that's zoned M1 and M2 right now, period. That's the way I read it. Correct me if I'm wrong. And that's not right, because the whole advantage of owning property in a manufacturing district gives you leeway to do a lot more things. As a business owner, that's what I look at.
So let me ask you something. So I understand what you're saying. We had some discussion on this as well, but going forward, can you bring something at the next month's meeting then to figure out how you want to do the M1 and M2 districts?
Well, I think it starts beyond that. I think you have to start with central business and restate that saying, hey, if you're in central business, these are the things you can do. These are the things with a conditional use you can do. And then restate outlying business saying, hey, you can do everything in the central business plus these things with a conditional use. So I think we just need to reword the verbiage to make it a lot easier to understand from an outsider especially. So it's not like, yeah, I can definitely do that for the commission because I don't think it'll take much. I think as a commission as a whole, we should all look at what is allowed in a central business, outlying business, manufacturing, and see if there's anything on that list that would maybe offend you or offend maybe a citizen in Mayville, like, boy, I don't feel we should be able to have a service industry in the central downtown district. Stuff like that. So maybe in the next month, we should all think about those things, look at what's listed. And if we feel like we should change it as a commission, we could give that recommendation to the council. But definitely the verbiage needs to change when you look at the central and outlying business.
Well, this was personal for you, so you read all this stuff. So if a whole bunch of these things are saying the same thing, wouldn't it be in theory just take one of those, look at it and verify that it's good and then do that?
I would agree, Brock. I don't think, I think we could, I hate to say copy and paste City of Beaver Dam's zoning requirements, right? I hate to say that word, but it'd be very, very close. I think City of Beaver Dams and actually Lemira's were very easy to follow. I guess as a citizen, I'd be worried if there was, I'm not kidding you, if I was a business owner trying to move to Mayville for a service company especially, when I say service company, that's very wide range. It could be the Orkin man, it could be a window washer, you know, those types of companies. When you specifically look at our zoning, boy, you couldn't do that in M1 or M2, even with a conditional use, because it's not listed in under conditional use, because the verbiage is wrong. As a commissioner, read up, start from the top of our zoning, and think of a businessman coming into town. It just doesn't make sense. That's what I would tell the commission, and I guess I think we need to change. And just bring those recommendations to the council.
Well, Nick, what do you think?
I agree with some of the stuff you're saying. I mean, especially regarding some of the occupancy permits I get in, it's like, okay, some of the uses are so vague. It's like, okay, well, does it fall under that or does it not? I mean,
You're right, Nick. Some of them are so vague, it's like, well, what does that mean, right? And you can't go out and list all the services, right? That doesn't make sense. But even having a service industry, I mean, think how many companies are out there in Dodge County that have a service industry. They're everywhere. I was hard pressed to find that in zoning where I could, oh, that fits.
Well, even the current Goodyear, if Goodyear was still out at that edge of town, they wouldn't even fall in our zoning.
No.
And they were there for how many years?
And that goes back to my other point of why spot zone? Like, I guarantee you that was all M2 out, you know, where Scott Foy, where I own, guarantee you that was M2 for forever because the, you know, Mayville Construction Company owned that back in the 70s and late 60s. There's an airport out there, you know. I guarantee you when EVS bought that building or built that building out by Goodyear, they had a spot zone that just so they can have an auto sales dealership there. And that shouldn't be. If it's zone M2, it should say, the zoning should read, well, it's M2, you can do that without a conditional use. Or we can make it a conditional use, whatever the commission decides.
Well, why don't you bring forward and any kind of verbiage changes you want so we can review it next month and take action from there.
Okay,
Well, someone's gonna have to start the process.
I understand. Yeah, it's really not gonna take much. What the verbiage needs to change in the central and outline. And then whatever is listed on those services, I think the whole commission should look at and be like, yeah, that makes sense. This doesn't make sense to me. You know, there's no way I would allow this industry in the central, stuff like that.
Right.
And
So we gotta get started somewhere.
get started. Do yourselves a favor and go to City of Beaver Dam's zoning ordinance and read that.
Okay. Everybody in agreement then?
So can I just ask, why did we make the change initially?
I believe that
We originally, I think you were even here. Remember we
I
had
wasn't here.
the 4 lots we had up in the industrial park? We wanted to have them, you know, pretty open so people could have a service business come into town and put stuff there. A growing operation for agriculture, we didn't have that. We put that in the council meeting.
And that never made it into the
And that didn't
ordinance.
get in the ordinance.
Sure.
So, you know, for them 4 parcels, we wanted to have more service industry because they're so small parcels, they're only 2 acre parcels. That's how this all originally started. And then we added that car detailer, because one of the guys that bought that lot was a car detailer.
But I frankly, I don't remember if I was here or not, but that's neither here or there. I don't feel like an auto dealership is equivalent to an auto detailer. Even though an auto dealership, like EBS or whatever, probably has a detailing service along with it, those two companies or services are completely different. They shouldn't be tied together in the same line. It shouldn't say auto detailer it should say auto,
It's used cars.
used cars
Yeah, because he was gonna
dealership
do,
/detailer, because
because he was gonna do detailing and
There's-
tires.
there's quite a few companies that just do
Yeah, but
detailing.
it doesn't,
It's totally different.
but it doesn't really matter because
Yeah.
the guy who's selling cars, right, is gonna be polishing and detailing them.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I think like what Travis says, I mean, if somebody's out there with salesmen on the floor at 10 cars out front trying to sell them, that is different than somebody who's cleaning cars.
I understand that, but it's the same. The
It's
reason,
not.
it is the same, because this is where it's the same, because the guy has a business license. What's the business license say? It says that he's a car salesman, right? Doesn't say car salesman and auto detailer. No, it's all one.
I don't know if that's an argument, because I have a business license to spray lawns. I don't have a business license to cut grass.
Or sell chemicals or sell lawnmowers.
Exactly. So there's a big disparity there, in my point of view. The guy that just cuts grass, not even a high school kid that starts an LLC, is a completely different company than a guy that sprays lawns or like the Orkin man or stuff like that. That's a whole different industry.
Even though that guy might mow lawns too.
Exactly. Even though that guy might cut
That's
grass.
retail sales.
So I feel, as a commission member, a used car salesman should be under a conditional use, because even in M1, M2, like the ordinance reads, I feel like that should be a conditional use, because they'd have to go to the commission and say, hey, this is what I plan on doing. Okay, right? But to have that tied into a guy that details cars, I mean, just so you guys know, Jimmy Drinkwine detailed cars in our central business, right?
I'm not sure about that. Is that-
Oh, yeah, he did, because
Yeah.
I had him do it multiple times. That's downtown. And we're requiring right now, in our M2 district, a conditional
Was
use.
that
for the same
central
service.
business district? Is that R1, B1? Because I know the cheese store is R1, B1.
I think it's right next to RB1. That's not on it.
Well, it doesn't matter.
But the point is that, is one, the city of Mayville, if we have our ordinance correct, we'd have a lot less spot zoning problems.
Right, I think you're right.
Two, some of these, look through them and really look through them. Some of these, I think, just don't jive with other municipalities in the county. And that could be a disadvantage for the town or the city. That's all I'm saying. I'll try to do my best due diligence and come up with a game plan for next meeting. But be prepared, because it should be everybody. It's not just my point of view. Right?
Right. Okay. We'll put that on agenda for next month then. Item 2, discuss possible action, the occupancy permit application intended use for 1056A 10 North Main Street, parcel number 251-1216, 1323-016, owner Travis Cole.
So this is kind of what kicked off the previous discussion. For this business, it's out in the M2 zoning district. We had discussed the used car sales and detailing. For the permit application, the business listing was auto detailing. Just looking for direction. I mean, the only other one that it could potentially fall under was a permitted use of motor vehicle and motor vehicle equipment. But that's kind of a stretch.
That's one of the big ones.
Yeah. Yes. So I included the M2 along with the M1 zoning uses in there, but I mean, that's,
Right, we couldn't just approve this as the auto detailing and under the conditional use, right?
Well, you'd have to
Then
go
it's
through a conditional use process for that, like an application and
Public
review.
hearing.
Technically, right now, this doesn't fit our zoning, right?
Correct, because that use has been shown that it was not, there was no public notice for that.
I mean, so is that then just completely gone? We expunge that, or do we actually have to, have a meeting to essentially take that back off? Because I just want to make sure that we're not now also doing something that we're not supposed to be doing on top of something that we should have been potentially doing.
It's not enforceable the way it is.
Says who? The attorney?
Yeah.
And so does that mean it doesn't exist? Do we need to do a vote on taking that back off of there? I mean, I'm just trying to, so we don't have to keep shoveling the muck here. So we
Well, under the attorney's guidance, I guess it wouldn't even exist at this point.
Right, you should go back to the
Okay.
way it was before you adopted that ordinance.
Well, he says it wouldn't, it wouldn't stand up, but is he saying that it doesn't exist? Okay, all right.
So could this have happened with some of these other ones like 10 years ago and all that?
This,
Is this the only one that's been changed for a while?
That's a good question.
I have no idea,
You know what I'm saying?
but I think,
the public hearing did happen for like a rezone. I mean, I
Okay.
found that.
Okay.
And to find other zoning amendments, I did not from the time I
Is
did.
somebody else, the office?
Yeah.
Okay. I just saw somebody walking in, so.
I would think though, if you would sit there and go through all the zoning districts and have a public meeting regarding all the zoning districts for revisions, then it would.
You'd be back to day one and fixed everything.
True, that's a good idea. Then whatever did or didn't happen doesn't necessarily matter.
Correct.
Okay.
Don't know how we move forward.
Could we do something on a very short-term basis for like the next 3 months to give them a conditional permit for like 3 months? That would potentially give us enough time to unwind all this stuff, or is it already unwound and then it does fit and it's okay?
Am I allowed? Well, when I looked at this, just being new here, you already had businesses like this in that district when you adopted the M2 zoning.
Right.
So now, I would say that anything that had a business like that in that zoning should be a permitted use. How can you say that somebody that was there in business, now all of a sudden you need a conditional use to do the same thing that you were doing in that zoning?
So they
So
wouldn't, but they'd be grandfathered in, right?
at the time, right, but that should have been listed as a permitted use at that time. If you're gonna grandfather somebody in that was doing that business, it should have been included in your permitted uses at that time.
Sure.
And a change of use or change of ownership usually requires a reapplication for a conditional use.
Gotcha.
And this individual probably wants to be open like, already like yesterday, right? Probably?
I'm pretty sure he's cleaning cars there already.
Okay.
I misspoke, change of ownership requires an occupancy permit to be filed, and then if the business wasn't allowed, then we'd be in the same boat.
But conditional uses run with the property.
I don't think ownership would, change in ownership would, I mean, if someone goes from one business to the next, you still need an occupancy.
That's correct.
So how do you think we should resolve this to get him up and running? We should approve, permitted use?
We don't have to approve it. If you feel that it falls underneath one of the permitted uses in the M1 or M2, then he is permitted to do business. He doesn't need a conditional use then. A conditional use requires a public hearing
And which one
and
did you
then
think he
you're gonna
fell
list
closest
out,
to?
in a condition, you're listing out your conditions that he can do business there. And there really wouldn't be any conditions for him to do business, like noise or sound, because it's already businesses in that area that are doing the same things under permitted use.
Motor vehicle and motor vehicle equipment?
Yeah, that's, I think.
That's a very vague one.
Yeah. It's more to be-
Well, motor vehicle, I mean, he's gonna be detailing cars and,
And then we can change all this to make it more,
well, we're gonna work on this
Yeah.
next 3 months, and it's gonna probably take 4 months before this gets all resolved.
Mhm.
Well, I'll make the motion. We allow, what's the name of the company?
I don't know.
AK top to bottom,
All right. AK top to bottom,
auto service, I think.
then you would fall under the, is it M2 for motor vehicle, permitted uses? Got that? Is there a second?
Didn't she say we don't even need a motion, it's just permitted?
Well, you're making a motion for his for his occupancy permit to be allowed as a permitted use.
Sure. Second.
Any more discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right. Date and time of planning commission meeting next month is August 21st, 2024 at 4 p.m. And we'll have another commissioner hopefully by that time.
It's seven creation.
Both did seven creation.
Mhm.
Okay.
Commission level first.
Then we'll have the public hearing too.
I believe so.
We'll
Yeah.
do it.
Oh, it's just the one
All right, by order of chair, I'll adjourn at 4:31.
that-
Thanks.
I can't really have to get that commission or the-
What happened to your rental?
Oh,
Well, yeah, I've always had a computer clip, it never let me download. But